At the end of the third test between England and New Zealand, it's time for Ask George. Well, hello, George. How did you find day 5?
Typical, I suppose. Typical that it was over incredibly quickly and very exciting. And England made something really difficult relatively easy.
Well, MJ has the first question today. He asks, I've been a bit preoccupied over the last few weeks. Did I miss anything?
Oh, MJ, what have you done? I'm afraid you did. Who knows where it'll lead, but maybe you missed the rebirth of the side. Maybe you missed maybe you missed the birth of New England. I don't know, but it was a lot of fun.
Will Cooling, on a similar theme, asks, what happened to the couple of hours of cricket I planned to watch after my meetings finished?
Well, I don't know, but I don't know what you were thinking, because had it not rained, maybe Will had taken into account the weather forecast like a bright fellow, it would have been over well before lunch, wouldn't it? Yeah, absolutely amazing. So it turns out that last night, the fourth evening, when England needed nearly 300 in 40 overs, I guess they could have taken the extra half hour, so say 47, 48 overs. Ben Stokes told them to go for it and get it done last night. So amazing. The game has changed such a lot that I suppose we just have to expect them to react to almost every situation with ever more aggression.
Rob Stanworth asks, do you think England are going to commit to playing like this in India and the subcontinent? And the same applies to the pace and bounce in Australia.
Yes. Of course they are. What do you think is going to happen? Stokes and McCullum are going to go, do you know what? We're going to block the hell out of it. No. They're very committed to this, and there'll be good days and bad. But, I mean, to be fair, the other approaches haven't worked in India and Australia really either, have they? I would say that actually England were quite aggressive last time they won in Sri Lanka, and actually wouldn't take too much notice of the last India tour. It was played in very unusual conditions. But in Sri Lanka in particular, do you remember people like Keaton Jennings getting runs where he spoke really well about sort of not being able to trust his defence, not through any fault of his own really, but because the pitchers are doing so much. So they swept and reverse swept instead. So the defensive shot becomes an attacking shot. So, in those terms, it wasn't so different, and I expect we'll see a lot more of that in the future. But it's incredible how Johnny Bairstow in particular is batting. I mean, he is literally taking the limited overs approach. He had a strike rate of 120 in this series. He scored almost 400 runs. It's impossible. We used to think that if a player had a strike rate of 50, they were, good going.
Yeah, it's quite the turnaround for him from people thinking he shouldn't even be in the side ahead of the first test.
Well, what is it? Is it 10 days since you were reading out questions to me saying, isn't it time to give up on Johnny Bairstow? I mean, it really is, isn't it? It was halfway point in the series. Shows how quickly things can change, I suppose. But it's easy to be a bit wise. I mean, one of the openers, I think, averaged 14 and the other one averaged 28 or something. And you could argue that England have required almost a miracle in every match to win. Absolutely, judging absolutely where they are right now, very difficult.
Rashad asks, do you think this aggressive batting approach from Stokes and Bairstow will work against India, especially their spinners?
Well, it depends what you mean, but if you mean at Edgbaston next week, well, we'll see, won't we? But I don't know that it's going to be a particularly helpful surface for bowlers. If you look at the scores there this summer, it would suggest not. And again, you might argue, has poking around against them traditionally worked particularly well anyway? When KP played so well in India in 2012, he wasn't poking around, he wasn't defending. He had a defence, to be fair. But that magnificent innings in Mumbai was full of some remarkable sparkling shots. So, maybe it's not quite as different as we're suggesting some of the time, although it has felt it. So they'll definitely take that approach. Will it work? Well, let's see. That's kind of the beauty of sport, isn't it? The unknown.
Alex Chapman asks, Oli Pope has had an encouraging series at number 3. Do you think he has the makings of being a long-term option?
Well, it's a really interesting question. I don't know that I accept the premise. Has he had an encouraging series at number 3? I mean, I guess he has. On balance, yes. That's probably fair, isn't it? To be honest. He probably has had an encouraging series, which has also suggested a couple of weaknesses. Now, maybe he will learn to master those weaknesses, or maybe he'll be encouraged to keep doing what he's doing, and the odd failure is inevitable. I still think he pushes a wee bit of the ball. I still think there's sometimes a gate. I still think that sometimes he overbalances. I'm not positive he's got the technique of a traditional number 3, but England aren't playing traditional cricket. So he's obviously a very talented player. He'll take some confidence from the fact that he scored some runs, including an important century. But I don't think all the questions were answered, to be honest. I don't.
Jack Rule asks, how likely is it that the same team will play on Friday?
Well, I don't know what you mean, because maybe it's a reasonable question, but Sam Billings, does he play? Or, I can't predict whether Folks is going to be fit and healthy, more to the point. But I think they'll stick with the opening pair, if that's sort of what you're asking. You would think that they really like Crawley. I think McCullum said in media post-game that he'll never be consistent, which is actually possibly wrong, because he has been worryingly consistent, but not in the way you want. But they're very committed to playing that way. I mean, if you were Dom Sibley watching this, because I think someone asked a question about him a couple of nights ago, and I think I probably got the answer wrong. I think I said, they're going to like good cricketers. But actually, I think they are looking for people to be more aggressive than he probably can be at his best. So I would expect them to keep pretty much the same batting lineup, apart from that issue with Folks. Look, Jimmy Anderson comes back, doesn't he? He's been bowling in the middle today and looks fine. Potts looks terrific. It's probably Broad, Potts, Anderson as the seamers, but you could make a case, couldn't you, playing Jamie Overton, I guess, dropping Broad, but that'd be controversial. But you could argue that he offers something slightly different, strengthens the batting. Obviously had a huge role in this game with his batting. And you could argue that he offers something that is covered if you have Broad, Stokes as well. You know what I mean. Overton has possibly a slightly unique selling point as a faster bowler. So, but I would think they would go Broad, Anderson, Potts as the 3 main seamers.
And just finally then, what are your takeaways from watching England across this whole series?
Well, it's been incredibly exciting and unlikely and unpredictable. I'm reminded, and I think it might be the first line of my piece, but I haven't decided, of that Bob Dylan line, something's happening, Mr. Jones, and you don't know what it is, or something's happening here and you don't know what it is, do you, Mr. Jones? And I felt like Mr. Jones a few times. You could argue, and I still think this is kind of true up to the point, that there's something wrong with a game plan where you need a miracle to win each game. And England have had a miracle almost each game. And, they're 55-6 in this one. But if you keep producing miracles, is it still a miracle? I don't know. I mean, they keep producing these incredible performances. 3 run chases in a row, 250 in the 4th innings. No one's ever done that before. And there's been times in every game where you think they're dead and buried, you think they're out of it entirely, but they just keep going. So it's been a delight. It would revive anyone's spirits, this series. And actually, New Zealand play good cricket too. They don't deserve to be 3-0 down. It's been played in really good spirit. It's been played hard but well. Reminder that you can do that. That is refreshing, because it's not always so. I guess it's just been really nice to see a slightly sad and jaded side, which England have been for a year or so, breathe again, exhale, have fun, and see the crowds react to that, because, we've had really, really good crowds. Do you remember the series started with those stories about, they weren't selling all the tickets at Lord's? And although there were some extraordinary reasons for that, there were alarm bells there. So to see the crowds we've had ever since, and to see them basking in these incredibly entertaining performances is wonderful. England have become the most entertaining Test side in the world. Suddenly, it feels like they have led the way in the way they did in limited overs cricket after the 2015 World Cup, in a way that they might not have done in Test cricket since Bodyline. To win 3 in a row, I don't know whether that's sustainable. Of course, there'll be bad days, and I suppose that India is probably a step up in quality, but it's a year since this New Zealand side. won the World Test Championship. So although they're weakened, although there are various reasons why they've got illness and injuries and retirements, they're still a good side. And so I wouldn't want to minimise what England have achieved. Basically, it's been really, really good fun. And that is the point. That's why we all get into it. Yeah? That's why people buy the tickets. That's why you become a journalist, because you really love the game and it's fun to watch. And it has been, and it's been unlikely. You know, you couldn't predict what's happening or about to happen. And that's all you could want, really. So sometimes if you have, 4 back-to-back tests, which is kind of a crazy schedule, you're a bit weary by this time. I can't wait to get going at the next one. I hope the players feel the same. I'm sure they do. I mean, I think you can see just behind us, Ben Stokes was playing on the outfield with one of his children. I don't know. There's something really nice going on, and really nice to see players like Johnny Bairstow, who has been messed around. We know that. Just relaxed and happy and excelling. Just an outpouring of natural talent. And the same actually with Jack Leach. Maybe not quite as obviously naturally talented player, but to see a player like that reveling in his opportunity after tough times he's had in life and in the sport is brilliant. So actually, I was speaking to Mo today, and it's like, I've been talking to the lads, kind of can't wait to get back involved and stuff. That's really nice. By the way, one thing he did say, because I don't want to make him sound like he's like, he doesn't want to tread on Jack Leach's toes at all. But if they want more spinners in Pakistan, because he probably played 2, maybe 3, then he'll be available. But I don't think he's looking to take Jack Leach's place at all. I think he thinks that Jack is having is deserving his opportunities, improving all the time. So basically, it was nice to see really joyful cricket, because by the end of that Ashes tour and by the end of the Caribbean tour, they did look sort of sad and weary and dispirited. Not through anyone's fault, really. The COVID protocols and everything were very draining. And there's no sign of that now, is it? They look absolutely revitalised.